World War II, 1944. Allied troops have obtained complete domination of the European theater. The Normandy invasion has led to a surrounding of German forces, minus a small 18-mile gap which allowed some German troops to retreat back to their homeland. As the days of the war drag on, the Allies gain confidence that they have the Germans in an inescapable position, and the war will soon be over. The Allied commanders, however, underestimate the high morale of the remaining German soldiers and the determination of Hitler. While Russia closes in on Germany from the east, Hitler decides to carry out a full offensive against the British and American troops in the west. This campaign, known as the Battle of Bulge, pushed back the unprepared soldiers at the front of the Allied lines, but in the long run was in vain. By May 8th of 1945, Hitler and his most loyal commanders were dead, and Germany had surrendered. The war in Europe was over. This final stretch of World War II is the topic of the book No Less Than Victory by Jeff Shaara. This information-rich novel tells the story of late 1944 to mid-1945 from 7 different points of view, ranging from General Eisenhower to American frontline soldiers to Hitler's closest advocates. The varying viewpoints allow for the reader of No Less Than Victory to receive a full picture of the events leading up to the end of World War II. Despite the fact that the book is a novel containing some fictional characters, it contains a detailed and accurate description from the Battle of Bulge to the end of the war. Although Shaara never explicitly states a thesis, No Less Than Victory has a clear main idea. His thesis is, although the final German push in the Battle of Bulge inevitably ended up unsuccessful and led to German defeat, it demonstrated the Allies' underestimation of the remaining German forces and came with major consequences for the unprepared troops at the front lines of the Allied advance. While this thesis may appear complex, the idea it encompasses is fairly simple. The Battle of Bulge led to the defeat of the Germans, but came with consequences for the Allies as well. A major strength of this book is that it can be read and comprehended by virtually anyone of high school age or older. No Less Than Victory contains an introduction and an afterword which give more factual insight into the events being discussed in the actual novel. Understanding and appreciating the book requires only basic prior knowledge, because all the information needed to understand the book is given in either the novel itself or in the introduction or afterword. This allows for the book to be enjoyed by almost everyone, not just historians or World War II fanatics. The layout of the book also allows for it to be enjoyed by everyone. By giving information through a story, readers who may not be interested in the events themselves will remain intrigued throughout the novel. The characters, both those real and fictional, act and speak like average people, making them very relatable to the reader. A perfect example of the relatability of the characters is the fictional character Private Eddie Benson. No Less Than Victory is told from Benson's point of view more than any other point of view, and this is no accident. Benson is just an average soldier whose division is hit hard by the German advance. Throughout the story, the reader learns more about his past and his beliefs, which makes him more and more relatable to the reader as the story progresses. While reading the novel, the reader will see themselves in Benson, which results in the reader wanting to follow his story until the end. Through characters like Benson, the novel keeps the reader interested as it gives information through telling a story from various interesting characters. The fact that the book is told from various points of view greatly helps Shaara prove his thesis. The 2 German points of view show how even those closest to Hitler knew that defeat was inevitable, but that they knew they had no options but to listen to their leader. Through the perspectives of the Allied ground soldiers, the reader can see firsthand the devastation suffered by the soldiers at the front of the American defensive lines. The death and brutality that the unsuspecting American soldiers experience is told mostly through the perspective of Benson and shows that, as stated in the thesis, the Battle of Bulge did come with massive consequences for the Allied troops who found themselves caught in it. The perspective of the American commanders, especially Eisenhower, shows that the Allied commanders did not expect a massive German offensive attack. On page 25, Eisenhower says,
"I thought the enemy was whipped completely. I never thought they'd make another fight. We let a bunch of them escape out of France, and I thought they were done for, running home with their tails between their legs. Surely Hitler could see the foolishness of going any farther. The Russians are pushing him just as hard, maybe harder. I didn't expect they'd still put up such a hell of a fight."
This quote clearly shows Eisenhower admitting the underestimation of the German forces by the Allied leaders. It shows that although Eisenhower knew that some German troops had escaped, he did not think they would be able to come back and fight. The Allied leaders clearly underestimated the morale of the German soldiers. By describing the Battle of Bulge from various perspectives, Shaara is able to prove his thesis that the battle did lead to the defeat of the Germans, but came at a cost to the Allies who initially did not expect an attack. Through this storytelling method, Shaara is effective in proving his thesis. As the novel goes on and the plot develops, the three parts of Shaara's thesis become clear. The idea that the battle led to an inevitable German defeat is demonstrated through the discussion among German officials. The reader gets to witness firsthand as Hitler's so-called perfect plan falls apart. Tanks run out of fuel, and the troops move much slower than Hitler expected. By the end of the novel, it has been made clear that with Hitler's plan in effect, the Germans never stood a chance. By allowing the reader to look into the headquarters of Ike Eisenhower, Shaara shows how the Battle of Bulge caught the Allied leaders by complete surprise. Even after the battle had begun, it took some time for the Allied commanders to accept the truth in the seemingly questionable reports they were receiving about massive casualties and retreats. Through the perspective of Private Eddie Benson, Shaara demonstrates the horror of the American soldier's condition on the front lines. Benson never knows what Hitler or Eisenhower is planning next, as the reader does. He knows only what is happening to him and those around him. This ignorance gives the reader a perspective that provides an accurate and detailed description of the horrors that face the average American soldier in the Battle of Bulge. Throughout the book, there is talk of what people in America think of the war, which contextualizes the events taking place in Europe. Eisenhower expresses his concern that many people do not believe the situation is as serious as it is. With the Battle of Bulge, American confidence changed drastically. To convince the public that the Battle of Bulge would not threaten the American position in the war, President Franklin Roosevelt gave this Battle of the Bulge address.
We have seen a year marked on the whole by substantial progress toward victory, even though the year ended with a setback for our arms, when the Germans launched a ferocious counterattack into Luxembourg and Belgium with the obvious objectives of cutting our line in the center. Our men have fought with indescribable and unforgettable gallantry under most difficult conditions. The high tide of this German attack was reached 2 days after Christmas. Since then, we have reassumed the offensive. We have rescued the isolated garrison at Bastogne and forced a German withdrawal along most of the line of the salient. The speed with which we have recovered from this savage attack was possible primarily because we have one supreme commander in complete control of all the Allied armies in France. General Eisenhower has faced this period of trial with admirable calm and resolution and is steadily increasing success. He has my complete confidence.
Obviously, Roosevelt did not want the American public to worry. His address led the American public to believe that the Allies had recovered quickly from the savage attack, when in reality it took a few weeks and thousands of lives for the Americans to fully respond to the German push. No Less Than Victory clears up this confusion over the battle and shows the battle for what it really was, an American victory at a large cost. In No Less Than Victory, Shaara does not simply give information to prove his thesis, but provides information through an intriguing and thrilling story. This sets it apart from many historical works of literature as it manages to be both fact and plot-oriented. Unlike most World War II novels, No Less Than Victory does not limit itself to either an Ally or Axis point of view, but gives both American and German perspectives. While its point of view is broad, the story it tells is very specific. Instead of trying to describe the entirety of World War II, Jeff Shaara focuses on just the last few months. This allows him to be detailed and move at a pace that is easy for any reader to follow. Overall, reviews for No Less Than Victory are mostly positive. Publishers Weekly wrote, "Thanks to Shaara's visceral descriptive powers, we ride on a bombing mission with Bombardier Sergeant Buckley as his B-17 flies through the flak-filled skies over Germany. With Private Benson, we feel the cold deprivation and sense of dislocation of the Ardennes, and we sit in an observation post right on the Germans' doorstep as Captain Haraway calls down artillery fire on the enemy. However, the review points out that the topic of No Less Than Victory is somewhat unoriginal, as it says, "In the end, Shaara delivers nothing we haven't already seen in Stephen E. Ambrose's Band of Brothers or Cornelius Ryan's The Last Battle, but fans of military fiction will definitely gobble this up." Goodreads.com rates the book at 4.2 out of 5 stars, with over 1,500 reviews ranging from absolute praise to frustration at the boredom of the book. Despite some negative reviews, it is clear that most reviewers enjoyed No Less Than Victory. I would strongly recommend this book to anyone who wants to see an in-depth look at World War II or just wants to read a good adventure novel. No Less Than Victory by Jeff Shaara is captivating and will not disappoint those who enjoy historical fiction. Despite the fact that No Less Than Victory is a novel, it is information-rich and has a clear thesis. This thesis, that although the Battle of Bulge inevitably ended in defeat for the Germans, it came at a cost to the Allies whose leaders underestimated the Germans, is proven from the various viewpoints presented in the novel. Shaara presents information in a way that keeps the reader interested and proves his thesis, as the various viewpoints come together to form a detailed, complete, and well-written World War II novel.